Welcome, everyone, to the annual meeting of the Community Preservation Committee. I'll call the June 15th, 2024 meeting to order. This meeting of the Community Preservation Committee is being recorded and broadcast on the Town of Barnstable's Government Access Channel. And in accordance with Mass General Law 30A, Section 20, the chair must inquire whether anyone else is recording this meeting and to please make their presence known. Don't all stand up at once. I guess we're all set on the recording. So for this part of the annual meeting, we've got presentations. I'm going to give one on the recent year past, and then Jillian Douglas, the administrator for our Affordable Housing Trust Fund, is going to give us one on the trust fund's work on housing over the last year. And then I'll give a brief presentation on our draft plan, as well as take public comment going forward. So without further ado, I'll take the podium. All right, can you hear me all right? Thank you very much. So we'll start our presentation. This is a couple of projects that we did and our membership. Currently, we are vacant one Recreation Commission member. There's some question about the town charter and where that stands, so we have only 8 members of our full complement of 9. And our legislation is based on Mass General Law, Chapter 44B, passed in 2000, and we adopted it in 2024. And our 4 main categories are preserve open space, preserve historic sites, create affordable housing, and develop outdoor recreation facilities. And we are funded by our local surcharge on your property tax and distribution through the state, which has been very generous. But as of late, we may see a decline on that given slow real estate. And as you can see from our chart here, it's been fairly evenly distributed when you combine open space and recreation to about 11.5, 12 million each category. So we've been fairly consistent over the years. And I think going forward, we're probably going to see a decline in open space as the town gets built out. There'll be less available, which would make funds available for other programs. For the coming year, we're proposing some changes to the application process and incorporate it in our handbook, which we'll see later. But we are going to formally require the determination of letter of eligibility for historic preservation restriction through the Mass Historical Commission prior to even being able to apply for historic. That'll streamline that process, and we won't be waiting, hopefully, 2 years at the end of a project to get a historic restriction. And then we have already started implementing the execution of a grant agreement, as you see right there, which is basically the contract that'll hold us going forward regarding the various projects we take on. And again, we've listed some of our key features on some of these programs. Open space, we can acquire and create it through acquisition. And one of the main focuses lately has been protecting coastal and drinking water supplies and Zone 1 recharge areas. So those have been our principal focus, and I think you'll see that continue. And here's one that's coming up, 150 Wheeler Road. That easement will be granted soon, and we'll have access to this beautiful beach. It's a great spot if you haven't been there. Great place to take a quick dip. And this is an older project, but one of our great ones going forward for public access was the Pleasant Street Park. And the Cobb Trust acquisition down there in the Mary Dunn Road area. Critical wetland piece that's going to be used as mitigation for the bikeway. And some recreation projects would be the various playgrounds we sponsored, and hope to see getting going in Osterville and Centerville real soon. And the pickleball courts, if you haven't seen them in Marstonville, are just fabulous. I just took that sport up. It's tough for beginners, but what a facility. Just wonderful and packed all the time. And these are a view of the Osterville site. This is the Verizon building right next door with the streetway out here and the tennis courts to the south. It's going to be a great project, much needed in Osterville. And here's the bikeway, which the bidding is beginning to go out in August of this year. And that will connect from Peter Homer Park in Yarmouth across Willow Street, actually in this area. Our section is from the town line in Barnstable all the way down to Mary Dunn Road. It'd be a great addition, and create the link going. You'll be able to go all the way to Wellfleet. And historic preservation funds. One of the things we don't talk about much, we're always talking about buildings, but for example, we redid all the town records over the years and done a great bit of work with that stuff. And that, in many ways, is as important as the buildings and some of the other things we do, is preserving some of these records, digitizing them, making them available to the public online. Another great project, Zion Museum. Every time I seem to go down South Street, there's a bus in front of that place unloading or loading. It's a great, great facility. And I love this statue out front. That's a fabulous one. We have done other projects. I believe this is Sturgis Library, yes. You can see the chimney that was repaired there. These are the things that just don't seem to get done without a little support from us. So we've done archival records, and I was just informed today that the heating system replacement is done. So we need to do a site inspection over there and give that a sign off, and that project will be complete. And one of the more interesting ones, you don't see this very often, but the German POW message in a bottle is completed, and that'll be on exhibit there. So that's a fascinating one. And also the Old Colonial Courthouse, they've finished all their planning process, or in the last stages of developing that. So a bit going on in Barnstable Village, but that'll be a good one. And you can just see the condition improvement from one photograph to the next. It's night and day over there. And their membership and speaking events have increased. They're doing well. And of course, the Customs House, the old building across the way from a Unitarian Church, now the Coast Guard Museum. That, if you look closely at that building is really held up well from the brick preservation that we did, and that coating they applied. It's done real well. Community housing, well, we've done a lot of different things, and we're looking for more. One of the biggest efforts we did that we may have forgotten about over the years is the renovation of some of these existing projects with the help of POA, Preservation of Affordable Housing. They were a great group to work with, and we have done some significant renovations through them. 57 Ridgewood Avenue, great sort of Cape style design with the porches. And 255 Main, right there down at Center Street. That building really needed a lot of work, and I know they get into a little bit more than they anticipated with the back of it, but that has really tidied up that intersection down there. And here's our total of appropriations for fiscal 23 and 24. Interesting how we were heavy one year with historic preservation and then swung back to community housing with our grant to the Housing Trust. So it's interesting to see how the funds flow from year to year. And some of our projects for these last few years, the Zion Museum, restoration, bikeway, as I mentioned, Old Colonial Courthouse, playgrounds, Unitarian Church, which is now complete, and 150 Wheeler Road, and our ongoing project with COMM for the Zone 1 drinking project. This is our available funding for fiscal '25. We're retiring some old land bank debt, so there'll be this budget reserve you see will be dwindling, and we'll have more available as the land bank debt is retired. But we have a fair amount of money in undesignated. We have some big projects coming up, and I know there were some big asks through the town as well. So you'll see our undesignated dwindling in the near future. Yep. Any comments, questions? Anyone? All right, seeing none. That's the end of my spiel. And I believe, Jillian, you're ready to take over?
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me. I'm representing from the Affordable Housing Growth Development Trust. My name is Jillian Douglas, and let's see, I can just move along. I'm going to refer back to some of what Lindsay said, but most of my slides, I'll just zip through them again, and hopefully people will have, it'll inspire some questions or thoughts. And let's see if I do this right. So our trust members are appointed by the town manager. They're ratified by the town council. By statute, the town manager or his or her designee must be a member of the trust board. Current members, town manager Mark Ells, assistant town manager Andy Clyburn, finance director Mark Milne, affordable housing representative is Laura Schufelt, who currently works for Mass Housing Partnership, and Wendy Norcross is our economic development specialist. She is currently working at the Kennedy Museum. And this makeup is a little different than some of the other towns on the Cape. Barnstable, because it's a bigger town, is a town council town, and some of the other towns on the Cape are more heavily weighted with members of the public. Of this particular makeup, 3 members are staff members, 2 members are Barnstable residents. And let's see, I'll move ahead. Let's see. So in 2022, as Lindsay had noted, the CPC committee, this Community Preservation Committee, decided to refer all of the CPA housing applications to the Barnstable Affordable Housing Growth Development Trust. And so we have been handling those going forward. Trusts, I did not, in this evening, I'm not going to talk too much about the statutory and the legislative capacities of a trust because I had done that in our last presentation. That's recorded. People can go back and see that. But a trust is more flexible than a CPC committee. The trust's use of the funds that originate from the Community Preservation Act are limited to those uses of the CPA Act. So we can't do things with those funds that are not already authorized by the CPA. And as noted from Lindsay's slides, the CPA is the primary source of funding for the Barnstable Affordable Housing Growth Development Trust for the housing component. We have noted that the costs of construction and real estate have continued to rise. I see no change in sight in the foreseeable future there. So from a trust perspective, probably additional funding sources are going to need to be designated and leveraged to maintain the momentum and the progress that Barnstable has been making towards housing and providing for our residents. Let's see, so I said this in the previous slide, the Community Preservation Committee transferred an additional, and in Lindsay's slide, he noted the $2.5 million of CPA funding that was transferred in 2023. And that is, the trust is very grateful to have that. Without that, for our housing projects, we would be greatly limited because, as I noted again, we don't have another source of funding. So the historic low levels of housing for sale and rent in Barnstable for all households, particularly the lack of affordable rentals with rents less than $2,000, are a continued plague on our community. The reason that we need these funds so drastically are that the housing insecurity on the Cape is exacerbated further by the demand for seasonal accommodations. And I think probably everybody knows about that as an economic issue, but if you have questions or want to talk more about that, I can delve into some statistics. Wages in our region cannot compete with the housing demands that are supported by higher off-Cape wages for those accommodations and housing. 37% of Barnstable residents are cost burdened, and that means that they're expending more than 30% of their income just for housing expenses. And then 17%, which is close, you're getting up to close to 20%, are expending more than half of their household income on housing. And the reason that is such a shocking statistic is for the lower level, lower income homes, the remaining money that they have in their budget for anything besides housing it gets smaller and smaller. So that's just the reason the housing is such a continued need. Let's see. So the town is currently in the process of updating both of the town's LCP, Local Comprehensive Plan, and the town's Housing Production Plan. These two plans they go into all of the different needs of the town. The Housing Production Plan does a needs assessment, and once those are updated, those are going to guide all of our planning going forward, I'm sure yours as well as the trusts. And the draft plans have identified many new as well as continued strategies. And I underscore the many because some of those are zoning strategies which are unique to Barnstable and very beneficial for producing housing, but they don't cost our citizens any direct outlay of funding. Let's see, for more information on the town's the Housing Production Plan and the LCP, there are a lot more information on the town's website, so I put that up there as an address if people are interested. The key takeaways from the plans are that the housing needs and the levels of urgency are many and myriad, and they are varied. So there are many different types of need. The different needs also require different strategies and solutions, and the populations with the urgent needs warrant some public policy priority. This is just to go back also through what Lindsay had showed, just to give you examples of what the town has done previously using CPA funds. So these were funds that had not been transferred to the trust, that were still in your, through the CPA, controlled by the CPC. In 2006, there was $75,000 of funds that was transferred for for the preservation of LIP and HOP units. And a HOP unit is a housing opportunity program, and the LIP stands for Local Initiative Program. So those were basically comp permits throughout the town. There was a percentage of the housing that was permanently deed restricted, and over time, those deed restrictions, some of them were expiring, people were reselling the homes, and the prices, the new resale prices were exceeding what people could afford. So this funding was put aside to help bridge that gap. It's what they call buy-down funds. And I just highlight it because it was useful at the time and preserved units that were going out of affordability. And then these are just some other projects. I'll just, I don't think I need to read them off, but Village Green, Forward, which was in the town of Dennis, that was a special needs housing. And then also this program in 2020 in response to the pandemic, you folks as CPA had allocated $300,000 to help with emergency rental assistance. and that was very important. It was something that helped people in an urgent time of need. So I've only worked for the town since 2022, but some of these are projects that had come in 2020 and beyond. And one of them was a $90,000 grant to the Cape and Islands Veterans Outreach. That was a group home in Dennis, and that has been completed within the last couple of years, and finally those units are 5 units in the town of Dennis. And it's a regional project, which is unique because it's not something that's here in your town, but it is something that Barnstable residents and veterans benefit from. So the next was a $200,000 grant to HAC, Housing Assistance Corporation. That was the other one that Lindsay had a lovely slide of. That's 57 Ridgewood Ave. And 2 of those units were permanently restricted for affordable housing. Also, a forgivable loan, I think sort of as part of that Ridgewood packaging, if you will, or leveraging. There was $150,000 that Housing Assistance allocated towards purchasing a condominium and putting a permanent deed restriction on that. That's another way that people can create housing, is by putting a deed restriction on it, not necessarily building it from the ground up. And then the most recent one that during my tenure was the $1,400,000 grant to Standard Holdings. They had redeveloped a nursing home that had closed at 850 Falmouth Road. It's known as the Residences at 850. And 10 of those 53 units are permanently deed restricted. And again, these are 5 projects that are in process. So the first one listed there, Forward at the Rock. The town, or the Barnstable Housing Trust, is we have a second phase that we're going to be funding through that, but that was 8 units that were produced and are currently occupied again in the town of Dennis, and for special needs population. So $500,000, 500,000 has been through the trust allocated to a housing assistance corporation project that has not come to fruition. It's kind of on hold, but these are committed funds from the trust that would go to what they call an assistance resource center. So originally that was going to be at the old W.B. Mason site in Hyannis, but that they have not acquired that property, so that's on hold, and we're keeping those funds on the trust balance sheet as committed. So another $50,000, which is for pre-development, so it's a smaller amount, but it's a smaller project. But pre-development allows for these particular funds will be used for architectural design for the renovation of a second floor of a mixed-use site, and this will be at least one of those units is presumed that it will be deed restricted. Of course, you don't know for sure because it's pre-development. So once it's developed, once the pre-development analysis has been done, they may come back to the town asking for development funds for the actual construction or renovation. And the next one is the largest one to date. It's $2 million that's been allocated to the Harbor View. That's 120 units in downtown Hyannis, a renovation of a vacant TD Bank property. And that is a large amount, but it's also a very large contribution to the town's affordable housing. So 30 of those units will be reserved permanently for as deed restricted for affordable housing. And the full number, the 120, will also count towards the town's subsidized housing inventory. The last one on this page is the Barnstable Flats. This is $600,000, which is, again, just in progress. They just approved that funding, So nothing has been, we haven't even signed a grant agreement for this one, but this will be 9 units out of 45 that will be permanently deed restricted, 1-bedroom units at 199 Barnstable Road. And let's see, this one I actually had a photo of, so I wanted to share that. This is, I took this morning. This is 50 Yarmouth Road. It's Linnell Landing, and it's a $500,000 award. This is the house in front that you see there is an older home. It's I believe a historic home. I want to say 1830s, or and then the buildings behind are all new construction. And 5 of the units of the 15 that will be developed at this site will be permanently deed restricted. And let's see, this is just more about sort of the potential uses. And I find it easy to think about when you talk about economic subsidies that there's a supply side and a demand side. So I just wanted to highlight that the things that we're doing that are development activities, the things on the bottom, they're listed: land acquisition, new construction, redevelopment of existing buildings, conversion of market rate to affordable units, and mixed-use developments. Those things are more on the supply side. So this is what we're doing, is to create more affordable housing units. And same thing here, if the town opted to use town-owned parcels, that would be another opportunity for supply side. You could, I highlight this, I think the line in the middle, the projects where the town owns the land offers the greatest control over the final product. So it's important for towns to look at their vacant lands or lands that are considered surplus, that they might be not keeping for any specific purpose, to go through the process of analyzing whether that might be available for affordable housing. And the 3 parcels that have been identified, there's a small parcel, I want to say almost not quite 2 acres, in Marston's Mills, right on 149. The town did a request, or the trust did a request for, the town did a request for proposals, and that is going to be ownership units to be developed by Habitat for Humanity. So the Habitat for Humanity was the proposal that was awarded that site. And I put it up there because I think that more than likely, as they go forward, if there's a gap between what they can fund, and they will likely come to the trust for additional funding for the construction. The master plan for the Barnstable Adult Community Center also offers opportunity. The town is in the process of doing that master planning and working on the analysis as to what could be best done. There are outreach meetings that are being held, and so again, that will be likely, I would suspect, come back to the trust or the CPC or some other funding sources, because there's likely going to be a gap between what they can afford to do and what they can restrict for affordable. Also, the last one listed in the bold print there, the master planning, the redevelopment of the vacant 15 acres in Marston's Mills that was the elementary school site. It's likely through the planning process that there will be funds needed if housing is developed on that property. So let's see, I guess the next piece is that privately held parcels, that's what the trust has been doing. So most of the applications that we've been seeing are coming from private, either property owners or developers. And we will continue to reach out to members of the public who have property, or people who are interested in developing property in Barnstable, to try to work with them to create affordable housing, and if the trust can supplement in any way, that's what we're trying to do. So, and our preference is to see shovel-ready projects, but that isn't always possible. The other opportunity is pre-development, and that, as I had stated before, is that allows you to hire professionals to do analysis, and because affordable housing in the state of Massachusetts is complex and has a lot of different compliance and regulatory components. Oftentimes, a developer will have a great idea, but they just don't know how they can get to the next step. Pre-development funds can get them to the next piece. And then lastly, just more about leveraging. So the demand side, so this is when we were talking supply, that's the creation. Demand side would be programs and things that are more focused on consumers of housing. So I've listed just a couple there: rent assistance program, buy down and closing cost, housing repair loans to income eligible property owners, support or other established support of other established programs that are showing success. And that, again, those are things that through the demand side, the relief can be felt much quicker because it doesn't take a full construction cycle to build, and construction can take up to 2 to 5 years, even longer. And then lastly, that the construction costs, because they are rising, oftentimes a program or a preservation of a unit is more cost effective because it's going to cost less than the construction of the full unit floor up. And let's see, I think, is that it? I guess that's it.
Thank you very much, Jillian. That was outstanding.
Good. All right.
Questions, members?
I have a lot, so
Go for it.
do you want me to go first? Is that all right?
Go for it.
All right, I'm going to dive in. First off, I just wanted to ask, the trust was established by town council order, is that correct? Is it
Yes,
town council or-
it's an
Okay.
ordinance. So, the town had to adopt legislation and put forward a trust, and then the town council had to approve the creation of that.
Got it,
There
okay.
was also, I should say, there are regulations that go with the creation of the trust that have to be recorded, and they outline all of the methods going forward.
Okay, yeah, I think I found that on the website. Was it 2007 that the trust was established?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Okay. A great presentation. Thank you so much for all the work you're doing. Clearly you can see it paying off. There's a lot of success here that shouldn't go unnoticed. I did some quick math. 199 Barnstable Road, 20% affordable. That's really impressive. 50 Yarmouth Road, 1/3 affordable. Also very impressive. Remember, the minimum is 10. So awesome. Great to see. 307, do you remember the percent affordable at 307? I know it's higher than 10,
307
but
Harborview,
yeah.
yes, that is 25% was negotiated by your trust. So I have to give the full credit to your trust board members. They look at these projects and they take very careful analysis of what's possible, and they push our applicants to produce more or subsidize more deeply. So 25% of the 120 units, 30 will be deed restricted.
That's huge. Yeah, phenomenal. And 50 Yarmouth Road, there's a property right next door that's the result of a regulatory agreement done at Planning Board that's being built at the same time. So how wonderful to see those two properties side by side going up. So, again, there's a lot here. The last time I had a presentation on the trust, there was some conversation about first-time home buyers because, I know, these big properties projects are important. You get a lot of bang for your buck, I feel, but I wonder about the individual and home ownership. Some of the first-time home buyer programs that were discussed last time were wonderful. I just don't hear much about that anymore. Do you have anything the trust is doing or thinking of doing for first-time home buyers here on the Cape? Or in the town, I should say.
We haven't delved into a specific program for that, but going back to the program that, what I called the buy-down funds, so those have been used to preserve units that were already created with affordable housing restrictions that were going out of affordability. So I guess I would say like a first-time buyer program, you'd probably want to work with several local banks to have something that, in other words, that's kind of how those people first come into, that's how people are alerted that they're seeking the housing. So they're seeking like a mortgage from a bank. And if the banks reached out and said, oh, yeah, and by the way, the town will match a certain amount, that's the type of program that I think we've thought about.
I think that is a great idea. The other thing that I've seen is a rate buy down, where, you know, if somebody was going to be at a 7 or 8%, working with the trust possibly could buy down that gap to get them to a more affordable rate. For a lot of people, they were able to afford a mortgage at rates 5 years ago,
Right.
2 years ago, and now they can't. So, again, there's a lot of money there, and I would love to see something specific for first-time homebuyers. So I was curious about that. The source of income, you know, obviously, that's the biggest thing for me. That there is a bit in the housing production plan, you know, the 4-page handout, which is wonderful, by the way. I wanted to read 2 things. One of them is a strategy that says, consider regulations and other policies focused on short-term rentals to the extent they impact year-round affordable housing. And then on the next page, support the Barnstable Affordable Housing Growth and Development Trust by continuing to provide funding through the CPA, so that's us, and by seeking state authorization for a real estate transfer fee and building permit surcharge to create additional funding programs. I looked at the active in-progress projects you have, which is wonderful, by the way. 3.5 million is what that adds up to. So, I think we're committed to continuing to provide funding to the trust, but we can't be the only show in town. And those 3 ideas for me, tax short-term rentals, have a building permit surcharge, and have a real estate transfer fee. All 3 of those make complete sense to me because they make such a small difference. You know, if you're talking about a real estate transfer and there's a small fee on there, that's not going to make or break a deal. So to me, all 3 of those seem so logical, and I would just encourage the trust to attack those head on and understand that, the trust can't unilaterally make those into, create those into existence, but I think that you would see a lot of support for that, I feel, and I think town council would as well. Let's see, what else was I going to say? The 3.5 million you mentioned on in-progress projects, if all of that goes through, where does that put you in terms of your budget? I assume running low.
It's funny because I thought I had a slide in here that showed you our balance, but at the moment, we're still pretty good. Hang on a second, let me just give you a balance number, if I have that. Doesn't seem like it was in the slides. Oh, shoot. I'm so sorry, I didn't bring that number.
Well, and that's certainly something that could be added to
Yes.
speaking of that, Ellen, I'd love to see, if everyone agrees, both PowerPoints added to the CPC website under CPC annual meeting. I think those would be great to have. I certainly would love to look at them again. And if we had the information about the budget, where you stand, that would be nice to see as well. I think as a,
There it is.
a committee, I think we'd love to know what the expectation may be going forward for a request from CPC. Is it a annual ask? Is it a biannual ask? I know we would love to probably budget and plan ourselves.
See that Sarah is reading our minds, so we've gone back. This is the
Oh,
the slide
beautiful.
that I don't know how I skipped over it, but that's showing you that our balance after, including our committed funds, is still $2,234,000.
Oh, great, okay.
But bear in mind that with the cost of new construction, obviously, if we get another large project or several, that draws down pretty quickly.
Sure.
And I think the last time, so we came to you in, I want to say 22, and then again in 23. So we're grateful for those funds, and I can't say that we won't keep asking.
Sure, and again, I don't see any one potentially being opposed to that. I just don't see any harm in projecting what it might look like annually for us.
Yeah, good point.
And again, you know, there's so much great work being done by the trust that if we could somehow get more income, sources of income, I think that it would make a big difference. The last question I had, the housing bond bill has something in there mentioning $800 million for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Do you know anything about that? Is that a trust fund that's at the state level? And if so, is that money transferred to local housing trusts
Well,
like ours?
I was at the planning board meeting where they presented, and Jim is here too, and that was a question that came up. Do those funds go directly to the town? And no, they do not.
Okay.
They go through to the State Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and then all of the municipalities are eligible to apply.
Oh,
So
I
it's
see.
351
Okay.
towns that are competing for those funds.
Okay.
And again, also from the state's perspective, regional projects or projects that are showing shovel-ready and leveraging additional funds, they look more fondly on those.
Okay. It was me that asked that question at planning board.
That's
but-
right.
Well, great to hear that that's something that we can apply for. We have a lot of exciting projects, and I'm sure that there's plenty that we might be able to go for some of those funds. So again, thank you so much. Phenomenal presentation, and keep up the good work.
Thanks, Steve. Great job. Anyone else?
I do have a question.
Go ahead, Catherine.
Thank you for your presentation. Earlier in your slides, you had mentioned that the Affordable Housing Trust has more flexibility than CPA. Could you talk a little bit about what that looks like?
Let's see, how do I describe? So my knowledge of that is through sort of other towns, so I really don't know. I can't compare it with a town council town, but I am on the housing partnership in the town of Brewster, and they have an affordable housing trust that uses their trust funds. Also, by the way, they receive money from their developer agreements for cannabis. They receive money from their development agreements for cell tower leases. They also have a smaller transfer fee that they've added for affordable housing. So they've done things to supplement their trust that are not just CPA funds. And for instance, I'll give an example of another program that they've done. It's leveraged with, I believe, CDBG funds. So they were eligible by using 4 towns, I believe it's 4 towns have gotten together, and one CDBG grant that is also supplemented using trust funds that is for the renovation or rehab of income-eligible property owners. So if I have a deteriorated house and my roof is falling apart and I can't live there anymore, I can apply for these funds. It's not a large fund, and it's very quickly depleted, but it is something that's flexible and helps those, again, much smaller town, much smaller their housing stock. I mean, many fewer units than you have here. So I don't know how much dent that could make in the town of Barnstable, but certainly every little bit helps. And you could apply it to, say, a water sewer hookup or, some of those things that make the unit habitable. So that's how they've used those funds.
Is that it, Catherine? Anyone else? I had a couple quick questions for you. Do you know what the square foot cost of these projects are that you're taking on offhand?
I had some information that came from the Home Consortium because Rennie Hammond at the Home Consortium had done a very exhaustive analysis of the projects that they had been funding. And again, these are much bigger projects, and but over the course of, I want to say, the last 3 years, those project costs are much, much higher. And I want to say almost 70% higher.
Really?
And I think the last one that we looked at, and it might be a little bit hard to make a comparison with a town like Truro or Wellfleet, but they're up to about $700 per square foot.
$700.
It's a daunting number that we're looking at, so.
Sure is. And if I did my math correctly from your slides, you have over 50 units in various phases of development. That's pretty good.
Yes.
That's a bit to manage.
I would be remiss not to reach back to Jim, who is, all of the work that your planning and development office has done, and all of the zoning that the town of Barnstable has put in place, the special initiatives that you've done, are extraordinary in terms of generating permits, building permits, and people are really attracted. Your town is having growth where other towns are not.
And one last question, as Jim had mentioned about a real estate transfer fee, is that something that has to be enabled through the state? Town of Barnstable can't just do that.
So in the housing bond bill, originally, I think the proposal was that it would be just enabling legislation that the towns just had to vote to accept. I believe we're back to the point where it would have to be special legislation that the town would have to apply to, because I don't believe the enabling legislation was blanket. So it's something you could do, but it's probably a little bit more complicated than it would have been.
Thank you. Anyone else? Farley, did you have anything? Tom, no? Go ahead.
Don, go ahead.
Just a couple of quick things. Number one, thank you for the presentation, and second, for Steve's questioning in terms of that, because he's spent a lot of time from the planning board looking at the housing, because I have not spent a lot of time looking at the housing. I know it's a problem. And so, what Steve mentioned is true, is if you can alleviate, if you can get additional funding from some other source to help the housing, to give you a lot more power to provide the affordable housing, that is a good thing to do. I encourage that. I think everybody would encourage that, because then you're not just looking at the CPC for money. And secondly, just of curiosity, what is the status on the Marston's Mill Elementary School projects? Because I know that there's a lot of open house workshop and stuff like that. This is a few months ago. Mm-hmm. What's the status of that? I haven't heard anything after that. Just curious.
I'm going to turn it over to Jim Cupford. Jim is our interim director of the Planning and Development Department.
You can call me whatever you like. All right. Hi, guys. Jim Cupfer, Planning and Development Interim Director. Yes, a lot of excitement on the Marston's Mills site. So the old Marston's Mills School, as Mr. Lee mentioned, we had a number of early workshops this spring, both in person and remote. We did a nice site walk. We had a virtual tool online to gain public comment. We had a subsequent additional workshop where we moved map pieces around and tried to figure out what exactly could fit on 14 acres. We've taken all that. We procured BSC, our consulting engineer, and they're engineering 3 concepts for us. So based on the existing conditions and all the great public feedback we received, we're going to provide 3 concept designs of varying uses and potential densities, and bring it to both the public and town council for consideration, comments, and hopefully once we get that initial comments from those concept designs, we might be able to get to a preferred option and then fully refine that design. So BSC is procured to get us to final design and engineering of the site. We'll probably be back, the goal is 1st of September, early September, with those 3 concepts for everyone's consideration.
Thank you for the information. I'm curious, because this is only within 10 minutes from my house.
Lindsay, can I ask a question?
Go right ahead.
I don't know if this would be for Jillian or Jim, and I don't even know if it relates to what we're talking about, but it's a question that I've had on my mind for a long time, and I want to ask it. Say you built single-family homes at the Marston's Mill site or somewhere, and it was kind of an initiative started by the town. Is it legal to only offer those homes for purchase to people who work full-time on Cape Cod? Or is that considered a form of discrimination?
Currently,
Is the mic on?
I think the mic is off. Is the green light on? On the mic?
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm pressing all over. Currently, the state of Massachusetts will allow up to 70% of a project that has any sort of federal, state, or local funding for affordability to be reserved for what they call local preference. So that means that you could say up to 70%. You still have to do a lottery for those units. And again, this is if you are using any form of government subsidy. So if, I guess, I would say it would be very difficult to do more than that 70%. And you'd have to, the other component is that the state requires you to show why that need, what, are you doing other things in your town to provide affordable housing for perhaps other members of the population that are in need that are not in that specific category? So you have to sort of show that you're doing other things. And you would need to also show why that specific category is what is your statistical analysis to show that population is of a higher priority than perhaps the regular population. Does that answer your question?
That was great. That kind of puts my mind at ease. I just can't help but think to myself, okay, if you were able to build, I don't know, I haven't really looked, in depth at that site, but 20 single-family homes, how can we make sure that those homes go to Cape Codders who work here? Because if there is no way to have some control over that, what would stop it from going to, say, second homeowners from Newton or Wellesley or something like that?
So the income.
Not that they're bad, sorry,
Yeah,
not that they're
the
bad.
income
We love them, they're
eligible-
wonderful, but you know what I mean?
Well, I guess I don't want anyone in the public to think that you can build an affordable housing development that is not going to make sure that the people buying or renting those properties are income eligible. So in other words, for me to buy one of those homes, I would have to certify that my income is below a certain amount. So it is. So you wouldn't get people who were not income eligible. The component, I guess what I was trying to say is that there's 30% of those units that you really can't restrict to somebody who's already a Brewster resident. That's the local preference piece. So,
Yeah.
so
You have control over the affordable units, you don't have control over the market rate. The market rate is market rate. Is that what you're saying?
not exactly.
Oh, okay.
But I think what you were asking, I think, is how do you reserve things for local residents?
Yes, yes.
And you would have to apply for local preference from the state. And again, you can only go up to 70%, which isn't to say you shouldn't do that. It
Sure.
just says that you can't do 100% of that project.
Okay, okay. No, that's great. I thank you for that.
Excellent. Any other questions? Terry, did I see her? No? No? Very great job. Thanks, Jillian. Thanks, Jim. All right, now the next section is our actual plan for 2024. And I had thought that I might do like a presentation style, but I don't know why I can't just sit here and we could just go over it page by page. Yeah, let me get the clicker. Oh, thanks. So, there we have our opening page in our current lineup. And this is 2 pages, which will work. Can everyone see this, or should we go to 1 page per slide? Okay. And you can see we've got quite a few things, our category-specific criteria, and then the various 4 uses of community preservation funding, which is community housing, open space, recreation, and historic preservation. And we've already talked about our enabling legislation, and we've been around since 2006. We took over for the land bank back then. And we also have at the bottom of page 3, you'll see we have put together that lineup of local plans to support our handbook and our plan going forward. If you see anything missing, we do have the draft housing production plan, and Ellen was actually able to get a link to the 2018 field study report that was done for the athletic field. So we've got pretty much everything there. But the one thing I would like to see is an update on the open space plan. That version, and I know Farley is grimacing over there, it's really from like 2010. It's getting long in the tooth, but that was just an update. And so I don't know if you guys have given any thought to that.
We definitely have that on our agenda at this time. It's certainly a very arduous process trying to get through it all, so.
We wouldn't expect you all to do that. We'd have to allocate some money and bring on a consultant, and, we'd need to do some evaluations on where we're at with,
Sure, that's be
You
great,
know.
Because I think that, it would be very helpful, to
yeah, I
call
mean,
it
priorities have
now, so-
shifted since 2018 even.
Yep, right.
And we're nearing build-out, so there's not going to be many more opportunities to look at that inventory of what's out there and, where the market's shifting today. So anyway, just keep us posted on what your group comes up with at the Open Space Committee. All right. And then again, other slides on some of our, what we've done in the past. 196 towns now have adopted it out of the 351. The thing you see now, though, is cities are starting to come on board, and they take a huge chunk when they start asking for a match of their 3% for property values. So the trust fund does get dwindled, but they've collected $3.4 billion, which is a pretty big number. 36,000 acres of land and 3,700 recreation projects completed, 11,500 housing units created, and 18,000 supported. I think that's supported would be what we did for like POA, renovate some of these older units. Steve?
Just a question. I know in the town of Barnstable, we all have a surcharge on our taxes to fund. Is that every property in Massachusetts or only properties in towns who have adopted?
Only towns who have adopted.
All right, so I guess that's the good thing. If a city adopts, then now all those parcels in that city will have to start paying a little bit. So I
Right.
guess that is a little bit of a good thing.
And then they become eligible for the state match.
Oh, which sucks away more
Based
of
on
the-
their collection, so it draws more out. Originally, the city stayed away from it. But, even like when the city of Boston came on, you saw a notable reduction in the, they collect millions and millions.
Yeah.
But they've been building affordable community housing up there, and they've done some amazing things. But as more communities come in, the pot gets smaller. Any other questions on that? No? Okay, this is more, page 7, more information on what we've collected. And we've gotten 24 million in the trust fund over the years, and 58 million from local surtax. So we've got a pretty good chunk in the town of Barnstable. Page 8 is the vision statement. Give that a look over and see if there's anything there you'd like to add. One thing I want to remind members is, we're all representatives of this group, so don't hesitate to solicit. If you were at a cookout or cocktail party and someone asks a question, I'm always saying, submit an application, submit a letter of intent for your project if you have an idea, and bring it forward. So we're really ambassadors of the program. And that's why it's a good way to reach out to folks. And more information on our fiscal year. The surprising thing, the number on there on page 9 that I see is we do pretty well in our investment earnings, having our money a little tucked away. I was surprised that I thought municipalities were ineligible for investment money, but shows you how little I know about community finance.
Do we have any sense of the form, the source? Are they CDs? Is it a mutual fund? And
don't know.
Any idea? Okay. Well, whatever they're doing, it's
working.
doing good, yeah.
I mean, that was a net increase of 473,000, almost 474,000 from investment earnings. I mean, he's got that tucked away in some nice little fund somewhere. Page 10 talks about the project evaluation, and this is something I know we all spend time looking it over, but we're going to have some new local comprehensive plan coming out probably around next March. So we'll see what the LCP group and the town council comes up with through that and our planning board. There may be some new priorities that rise out of there. And I must say, too, one of the things we've been very good at, I can't quote the number right off the top of my head, but we've done very well in our matching funds program and requiring projects to come in, whether it be an affordable housing program or a local land acquisition to the land trust. We've done very well in the matching funds. So we've had some very generous contributions through that, and even in the historic preservation, most of these groups are able to bring in considerable funding. But again, with the prices of construction being what they are right now, I think historic preservation is going to slow down considerably. At $700 a square foot average new construction, it's expensive. Community housing, I believe Jillian covered pretty much the major items on that. I was surprised to hear that you still have a local preference, 70%. That's a significant number. Particularly when you get into categories, teachers, policemen, public service workers, those kinds of things. That would be an interesting tool to use. Page 12 starts on open space. Again, I think the priorities for drinking water, that has sort of risen to the top. I think in all the districts, with the possible exception of Katuitt, need another 1 million gallons of well development. Hyannis is still looking at town lands. We have our request in Barnstable Village, we'll be talking about later, and COMM. So we do need to secure new lands as the population grows. We need to make sure we have advanced supply in the works, particularly with some of the new forever chemicals that seem to appear out of nowhere, and the cost of filtration and that stuff. Historic preservation. This is a key area that we've spent a lot of time on in the past. As I mentioned earlier, though, I think you're going to see that slow down. I think the requirement for a deed, a historic preservation restriction prerequisite is going to go a long way to speeding some of those projects up in the long run, rather than have us go through all of that workings and then have a project not succeed to acquire one of those. Recreation, this is where one of the things that we will see more of is because of the playground, the lack of playgrounds in the town. Once we get the Osterville and Centerville ones done, we still need one in the western part of town. and one in Hyannis. So we have a need for at least 2 more. We, we never did replace the one that was proposed for the Barnstable, West Barnstable Elementary there, Luke's Love. And I know they're working on a master plan for Hathaways, for example, which could include a playground there. So huge need, and something I think we'll be seeing more of in the future. Steve?
So the only thing I'd say here is the speed at which we're able to get to the playgrounds is a little frustrating. It is a
Yes.
snail's pace. So just putting that out there. I don't necessarily have any solutions. I just wanted to mention that. And then I just wanted to bring back what you mentioned earlier, which is if I wanted to ask somebody in town about where things stand with the recreation member vacancy, is that currently at appointments? Is that at legal? Any idea where that stands at the moment?
No, but I see someone in the back of the room who might be able to answer that question.
All right, well, I'm just curious. I know Jim Tenaglia was a force for the town and this committee, and I thought that he was so educational for me about recreation because I just don't know much about it. And
Right.
I know he did a lot of site walks. I know he did a lot of work outside the committee, and I thought it was very beneficial. So I don't know. I just would love to get an update on that.
I will endeavor to do that, and we'll see, because it's been a year that we've been without.
Right, I know. And we have
That member.
eight members rather than the 9. So
Right.
yeah. Okay.
And moving on. And we did see a great presentation on the housing. I'm still very impressed by the amount of numbers of units that are in the works. And I think the Affordable Housing Growth and Development Trust has done great work to keep those projects moving, and some of the out-of-town projects. We started that long ago, but I think that's a great way to collaboratively join in with other groups and really produce some numbers. I do too. Farley?
At this point, are we at our 10% for 40B? No.
We're about 6.75%.
Okay.
So that's not bad, in terms of
Yep.
the statewide averages, but in order to reach our 10, we need to develop 707 more units based on the current number of
Yeah.
single-family
Is
homes.
that feasible? I mean, is that?
Well,
Well, if you get 53 in the works and you could do that for 10 straight years,
the only thing I was going to mention, if you don't mind,
go right ahead.
is when we discussed, again, the housing production plan the other night, I had kind of a aha moment with Elizabeth Jenkins. In order to get closer to 10%, the properties that you develop have to be beyond 10%, because if you're developing at 10%, you're not gaining any ground. So that's why the work the trust is doing is so great. When you see 20%, 33%, 25%, that will close the gap. But yeah, it's gonna take some time.
Yes,
Lindsay,
Terry.
the work that the trust has done is incredible. And initially, we thought, well, that's taking away what, in fact, would be our job. And, but it's just such an incredible amount of work. We couldn't handle that amount of work. And I think that the progress that they've made is incredible. And that's really what was needed. We just didn't see it at the time. So it's great.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, the only disappointing part for me was that I felt out of the loop. So having Jillian here this evening really was wonderful. Having a person to ask my many annoying questions to was great. So I just wonder if we might be able to make that more of a regular thing. Even if, Jillian, I hate to do this to you, but maybe quarterly, maybe 4 times a year we could hear from you. Just because this was very exciting to hear, and I would love to hear from you more. That's all.
All right. Thank you. more on housing for pages 17 and 18. We come to open space, and I think we talked about it earlier, but, there are 11,100 acres of open space in the town. That does include the Great Marsh, but I think down at Barnstable's done a great job over the years, but we are reaching the end to prime properties. So I think you'll see in the next life of the local comprehensive plan, the next 10, 20 years, that land will be acquired, town will reach build out, and there'll be more funding for recreation and community housing. I really see that's the way it's going as we move forward. Sure.
In thinking about that, speaking from previous professional experience, a lot of the town departments and local land trusts struggle with stewardship as a major cost to acquiring land that wasn't really considered at a number of years ago. And so at what point could we start considering funding projects of stewardship that would help with accessibility to the public within the protected lands here in Barnstable?
Well, maintenance, if that's the word, is specifically prohibited by the Community Preservation Act. Now, trail improvement, things like better signage, those kinds of things would be allowable, but general maintenance at this time is not permitted. Yeah. Did you have something, Tom?
No, I'm just saying that is a typical restrictions
Yep.
as how to use the CPC fund. I mean, we can provide the money to renovate the building, but we cannot do the maintenance.
Right.
That's why we always ask, the town should be providing the maintenance in the budgets as an ongoing process.
Correct.
I would just say, that there may be more opportunities now as we settle more into looking at the long-term accessibility to some of these properties, that there might be some larger scale, sort of like capital projects that help
Right.
increase access.
Yeah. Parking improvements, for example, those kinds of things, sure. Did you have something, Farley?
Certainly would seem very appropriate. I mean, just so that people of the town can, enjoy the open space. It's very critical.
And one thing we have found over the years is the legislature is very tuned in to CPA. They vote every year on our surplus. And when the problems, remember, we couldn't originally build any recreation fields except on land that was originally acquired with funds, and they changed that. So we could expend funds on land not acquired with community preservation funds. So I think as you see, and it's going to happen in the eastern part of the Commonwealth sooner rather than later, as towns reach build out, open space funds no longer needed for acquisition, perhaps funds could be allotted for improvements, maybe not just maintenance per se, but more lenient on the maintenance side of things. It'll be interesting to see. Okay. Again, more goals and potential use of funds. Give this stuff a good look over and see if there's stuff that's dated in here. It's a little longish, but it could be, there are things, if we're not targets any longer and not action items, maybe we should take them down. And recreation being the last one, again, playgrounds is huge. I think we've done a good job with most of the fields, but playgrounds are really one that we could really begin to address. I've made several offers to town manager's office to bring aboard someone to help us with this planning, to reach out, because for planning with playgrounds is so specific now. There's 3-4 age groups that you target and different levels of play for 0 to 5 and 5 to 10. And I always hear from, used to hear from Patty Machado over Recreation. She wanted the really active type climbing ropes and all of those types of things that are all popular now. So the recreation, world has changed to a much more active type of facilities. Gone are the swings and merry-go-rounds of our day, but it's interesting. And it takes a lot of planning to get these things sited and built. We talked about historic preservation. We'll see how that goes going forward with the expenses of construction. We're going to want to make sure that the bids we're seeing, particularly coming forward, we ran into a little bit of problems with that in the tail end, where projects were bid and folks had to come back and ask for more. So we'll get the 3 quotes and make sure they're nailed down. That's pretty much it, I think, on the bulk of it. We have some good reports at the end and things, but that's what we have. Any other thoughts on that? Give that a look, and we'll finalize that at the August meeting.
Just one quick thing.
Sure.
The report we get from Mr. Milne,
Yep.
financial report, budget, could that be added to this or to the website?
Probably both.
What do you think? Continually changing? Yeah. Yeah. Could we add it to either the annual meeting materials or to, I don't know, the plan with a date on it? Just, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I haven't seen it in a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
We just got it last month, but we'll reissue it for.
I might have missed it. Yeah.
Anything else? So that is it for this section of the meeting. Is there any public comment? Anyone like to speak to the group on our annual meeting? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
You're going to close the public hearing?
Oh, yeah, there you go.
All right, well,
Yeah.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
discussion on closing it? Seeing none, all members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. And now we can make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll take a 10-minute break and then go into the regular July meeting.